Good afternoon. Welcome to FOP class day 3, I believe. I hope you guys had a good evening. Today we're going to go ahead and start with our introduction to JavaScript. Now, before I jump into the lecture, do you guys have any question about what was covered yesterday? Any questions? No confusion? So far, you guys are doing good?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm doing good, but I'm slowly getting
Uh-huh.
there. I was doing the homework for the on the boxes, and so I was able to get the four boxes on the web page, but I couldn't get them to move yet. So so yeah, so it's a work in progress. So.
Good stuff. Yeah, so you guys are more than welcome to drop questions in the FOP Slack channel. If you guys encounter any issues or you just want some insight on something, then I encourage every single one of you guys to kind of collaborate with each other and just, if you see your peers asking a question or confused, step up and try to help out. Um, we always learn from each other. Um, and if your peers don't get to you or I don't get to you, Brandon might get to you. So do reach out if you guys have any questions, especially because it's such a big class. Usually, we tend to average about 8 people. Um, due to other people having, requirements from work and stuff. FOP is still a work in progress. We're trying to get uh command approval for you guys. So this is generally a much bigger class than usual. Actually, also before we start, um, if you guys were a part of QuickPass, uh, please drop in the chat your name. So I know I need to get a head count to know who's been in QuickPass. It's mainly for just tracking numbers and whatnot for our own records, for our stats. But yeah, while you guys do that, I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing my screen. Lesson 4, Zoom, and share screen. Awesome. You guys should be able to see my lesson 4 slide. I'll go into the slideshow. Today we're going to be adding JavaScript. Finally, we can actually make our page do something, move, make it interactable. This is where it gets a little bit more fun. You can actually start, um, creating things and seeing the labor of your work, kind of, right? Instead of just having little images and pictures and colors, you guys can actually interact with your website. So really important, yeah, a computer can only do what you tell it to do, right? Uh, oh, my bad. Essentially, that's referring to JavaScript, right? So, uh, everything that any kind of functionality you see on a web page is, directly hard coded into it, right? So whether it's clicking a button, whether it's typing into an input box, uh, moving from a web page to another, you know, stuff like that, all that is only done because you guys are going to code it into it, right? So, um, yeah. So what is a program, right? So a program is essentially just a set of instructions that you write to tell a computer what to do, right? A program at its, bare foundation is just a set of instructions, right? And you see that in your HTML document, your CSS. You're essentially creating a recipe for what your website should look like. Programming. Programming is the task of writing those instructions in a language that the computer can understand. And uh, I'm sure you guys already heard of multiple different languages out there. We have Python, JavaScript, we have Rust, C++, C Sharp, um, PHP. All these different languages allow you to interact with the computer. Some are used for specific purposes. The ones that you guys will be focusing on specifically in our program will be JavaScript, Python, and obviously your HTML, CSS, right? I don't count SQL as a language, but sure. All right, so JavaScript is a high-level language. It's easy for private programmers to understand and contains English words. Right, it allows you to use object orientation in visual language as objects. You use it for a lot of stuff. You can use it for your front end. Not many people use it for anything else besides that, but uh, it's it transfers over a lot, so you can essentially convert JSON, right, JavaScript to other languages, and that's one of the biggest perks, right? So you can essentially convert a JSON language into Python readable language, and you guys will get to experience that once you guys start working with Django in your backend. Low-level languages, the computer's own language, which is your binary numbers, right? Ones and zeros. I have not read this book. When these slides were created, they were created by Getty, right? He recommends the hidden language of computer hardware and software. I've only ever really had 1 or 2 students ever read this book in my classes, but they swear by it that it's a really good book for you guys to understand computers if you are not tech savvy. So here's a recommendation for it. I do have some books that I will be dropping in the Slack channel that will assist you in your journey. One is going to be a Python book. Has any of you guys heard of Jesus, what is it called? It's a am I still sharing my screen? Oh, I'm not. What's that book called? Hold on, time out. Did most of you guys start with JavaScript? Yes.
Yeah.
I believe the intro to coding is still just JavaScript, correct? It has not been done to Python. Okay. So
I mean, you can do either.
yeah, I'm gonna be dropping for you guys a book once you start Python. It's called the Python Crash Course. I don't know if you guys ever seen it. It has like a snake in the front. It's like yellow and like light bluish and white, I think. Great book. It's actually how I started coding. If you guys remember my little story when I told you guys that I went to the library and got like 8 different books of all different languages. The Python Crash Course was the main book that kind of stuck. Very user friendly. You're dumb like me. It talks to you like you're at a 3rd grade level. Very Englishy, which is awesome. And it has like a bunch of code alongs and stuff. And by the end of the book, it even shows you how to create a game in Python, which is awesome. Especially if you guys struggle with like object-oriented programming, it explains object-oriented programming very well. But yeah. So, are you guys still seeing my slides? Do you like JavaScript or Python better? Personally, I like Python better because I started with Python. They're both very similar if I'm being completely honest with you. There's very like there's some small changes in syntax. But for the most part, they're very, very similar. I also like Python a little bit better because it leans more to object-oriented programming than JavaScript does. Can you do it? Yes, but I feel like Python is just so much easier to understand when it comes to OOP. So yeah, I personally like Python better. You guys don't need to be Python subject matter experts yet or anything like that. If you guys feel pressured by that, I've always had students say like, "Oh, do I need to start learning Python now?" Like, I feel like I don't understand Python. I start off with JavaScript. You don't have to feel like pressured as long as you know one or the other, preferably JavaScript because Python is taught in the course. If you can come in knowing JavaScript, then you're fine. I promise you. And because Python and JavaScript are so similar, it's going to be very easy to catch on to it. All right, so don't stress it. Moving on. So what makes up a web page? All right, up to this point, I think in some previous slides, we saw what looked like a skeleton and then like the skin, right? And then the functionality, this kind of same thing, right? So you guys already have experienced HTML and CSS, and now you guys are going to see the other third pillar of your page, which is going to be JavaScript. And JavaScript is going to be the functionality of your website. This is what's going to actually make it move and make it somewhat dynamic, right? JavaScript is what moves whenever you press, next, and it sends you to a different page. That's what that does. Whenever you press search on your Google search bar and it looks for stuff, right? JavaScript, it does that for you. When you sign in to your Instagram account, right? You put in your credentials. JavaScript takes the information you give it into the input field. It sends a request to some API somewhere, where all your stuff is stored, or wherever the backend's at, right? And it grabs the stuff from their database and brings it back. They make sure it's verified. After it receives it, it takes your information and displays it for you, right? So yeah. So it does all that for you. I didn't mean to say API, I meant to say backend. All right. So the DOM, right? This is the first thing we're gonna learn today. All right. So what is the DOM? All right. The DOM stands for the Document Object Model, right? It is a programming interface for web documents. It represents the page so that programs can change the document structure, style, and content. This might be a little tricky for some of you guys to kind of take in, but the DOM is more of a concept, right? You don't really actually see it. It's pretty much invisible, but just know that whenever your browser loads your web page, it creates an object right under the hood. You can't see it visually. And essentially, it's a copy of what your HTML document is, right? And this DOM uses JavaScript to actually manipulate your HTML document, right? So whatever the JavaScript does to the DOM will do it to your HTML document, right? You can kind of see some of that work whenever we use the inspect tool. You see your HTML being shown. Just know that the DOM itself is just like an imaginary version of your HTML document, right? It's a copy of it that's being manipulated with JavaScript, and that's what changes your HTML, right? The DOM, typically most grabs you see start a document. I don't know why this one's in a window, but it creates a replica of what your HTML document is. At the root level, you have HTML, and then head, body, and then however other different branches you might have. Now, for your JavaScript, very similar to how we linked our CSS file, we're going to do the same thing for our JavaScript, right? Only difference is instead of using link, we're going to be using the script tag, right? So we see here script, and there's two ways you can link your JavaScript document. You can either do it in the head, which you see here on the right side, or you can do it at the very bottom of your body tag. It is more commonly done in the head, right? And I'll explain why. So essentially, when your page loads, it's going to load your HTML document first, right? And then it gets the head, right? Because that's the setting. That's how it, this is what gets set up first. When it gets to the script tag for your document, if it's in the head, it'll load up your JavaScript right off the bat, right? If it's in the script, if the script's in within the body, it'll load up your entire web page first before it loads up your JavaScript file. And depending on how big it is or how long it takes, you might have a web page that doesn't work yet until the JavaScript loads, right? And it won't load until pretty much all the HTML is loaded. The difference with having it in the head or the body is when we have it in the head, it'll load it up first, and we also use this property here called async, which stands for asynchronous. What that means is when it goes to load your JavaScript file, right, it might take a bit. You might not notice it yourself. It might be like a split second or a second, depends how fast it takes, right? But by putting async within your script tag, it lets your JavaScript load at any point in time, the moment it is ready, if that makes sense, right? If we did not have async, essentially what would happen is your web page will take forever to display anything until the JavaScript has been loaded. By adding async, it allows your browser to display the rest of your HTML, even though your JavaScript is yet to be loaded. And then once JavaScript is ready, it'll load it as well. If you didn't have it in there, the async, essentially it will slow down the download process of your browser or the display process of your browser until it gets past this point. Does that make sense? It'll make more sense later on. And I'll explain how, right? Let's say, for example, when you guys create a playlist on Spotify, right? Let's say you're creating a playlist on Spotify and you decide to add or play a song, right, from your playlist. This playlist isn't immediately loaded, or this song isn't immediately loaded into your browser. Are you guys aware of that? Right, when you go and you see the music in your playlist on Spotify, it's not just readily available. You have to click the song, and then when you click it, you press play, your browser, right, the code behind the hood, it's sending a request somewhere wherever this song is located at, right? And that takes time, right? That takes time. If we did not do it, it's asynchronous. What would happen when you click that song, right? It would open up that song and try to play it, but you will get an error, right? Why would you get an error? Because the song never loaded, right? Because it still sent the request up. It loaded your entire page. You can see that you're supposed to be playing the song, but it never got the information of the song, all right? Because it's still taking its time. And then what you will find is that you have to reload your browser, and then the second time you reloaded it, it would finally play it. That's because if you didn't have asynchronous, it loaded everything first. It's still putting that request to go get your song. It's taking some time. It's not doing it asynchronously, so it never loaded on itself. What asynchronous does for you, it allows you to receive all this functionality without having to manually reload your web page again. Does that make sense? Kind of, maybe. If it doesn't, just know that it'll make more sense in the immersive program. I promise you. You'll figure it out. Like I promise you, because it happens to everybody. You try to make an API call and it won't work. You're like, oh, why isn't my image loading of cats? And it's like, oh, well, because you didn't do it async, right? And then you press the reload button on the refresh page, right? You refresh your page and then suddenly it's there now. Like, why do I have to keep refreshing my page for it to appear? You'll encounter that issue, I promise you. But that's not the point of class. The point of class is know add async, okay? Cool. So you would do script async, just like we did before. We're gonna add some form of type, right? Here we did like relationship. Here we're gonna do type. It's very similar. We're gonna do text, JavaScript, and then the source will be the name of the file. And if you notice here, the script is not a self-closing tag, right? It has an opening tag and closing tag. Keep that in mind. Cool. Right, so referencing HTML elements with JavaScript, right? So the DOM that we mentioned earlier has certain methods, right? These are built-in methods, very similar to how like the language JavaScript and Python, they have built-in methods like, dot to uppercase, right? Dot to lowercase. These are some built-in methods with a language that allow you to do certain functionality. The DOM has something very similar. It has built-in methods. And these methods are what allow you to manipulate your HTML document directly, right? To grab the HTML document and do something with it, you're gonna start by using the document name, right? So you're gonna type in document, and then you can use dot and then give it the method you're trying to use. In this example, they're using the method query selector. If you guys are familiar with using dictionaries in Python, or even I'm pretty sure probably dictionaries in JavaScript, I don't use it too often. you use dot notation to access certain things, right? You guys track what I'm trying to put down? Very similar, right? Imagine the document as an object, right? If you guys remember, I said document object model. The document essentially is a JSON object, right? So we have to access it like an object. So we do document dot, and then the method that it has, which is query selector. And what query selector does for you, it allows you to select different elements within your HTML document, whether it's an ID, a class, or the element itself. You're going to see that there's different versions of doing this. You're going to see there is one called get element by ID. There's another built-in method called get element by tag. Those are more specific, right? Obviously by their name. We're not going to use those. You can if you want, but I'm teaching you query selector, right? Because it's a lot more powerful. You can, select pretty much everything by using query selector. And we come here to W3 Schools, and you go to JavaScript, go all the way down to where it says JS HTML DOM on the bar here on the left, and you can get different methods. Here we have DOM elements, document, methods, and you can kind of scroll down and kind of see different ones. Some of these, right? So this one right here, document get element by ID. It finds the element by the element ID. You kind of see how this is kind of linking to HTML, right? We add IDs to our tags. We have get elements by tag name, right? So I'm pretty sure that should be like paragraphs, headers, yada yada. We have get element by class name, right? So we can grab an HTML element by its class. So as I mentioned to you before, you can use these, but just use query selector. You can do pretty much both of those, all three of these in one. And then open and close parentheses, you add the actual ID or tag name or class name, right? Going back to this, after you grab something, you can also do certain things to that document, like add event listeners. What is an event listener? An event listener is pretty much your browser or your computer listening for something to happen on your web page. And what could that be? It could be an action, right? We're talking about action specific. It could be you hovering over a button, right? You guys ever see when you guys hover over a button, it might change colors or it might kind of expand a little bit. It highlights it, right? When you guys click something, that's an event, right? Those are the most common ones, either mouse over, mouse clicking, or clicking a button. That's an event. There's different events. You can find that too, pretty sure here as well. DOM event listener, or actually DOM events. All right. So let's see, do we have a list of these? We have on mouse down, on mouse up. So changing image when the user holds down the mouse button, right? On load, on focus. You can check other specific mouse events. These are just some of the ones you can do, right? Essentially, you're listening for an action on your web page. And for this one specifically, we're listening for a click, right? The click is you pressing the button, right? So this specific tag that has the ID turn red, I should be able to click it, right? And what add event listener does, it takes in an event and then it takes in a function, right? This function is whatever you want to happen whenever this event happens, right? So for example, if I were to click the view only button here on this page, that would be the event. And then the function will be whatever happens after I click it, right? Here, obviously, it would pop this up and ask if it requests my access, right? This function is the functions that you guys are going to create to actually do stuff on your web page. And we can see that down here. They pre-built the function turn red function, right? Just like very regular JavaScript. Same syntax, right? As JavaScript, how you create a function. And then within this function, what are they doing? They're using the DOM to grab the document, they're looking for something called body, right? And then they're gonna access the style of that body and then change the background color to red. And these two lines of code that we just talked about are pretty much the exact same for the rest of the code. The line below this is grabbing some kind of item that has the class name turn blue. It's looking for a click, and then it's using the turn blue function, which is doing pretty much the same thing as the turn red function, is just changing it blue. Right? This is what this is showing for you. This is going to be the actual representation of what that code does, right? So if you guys go to your VS Code and open up your lesson 4, you're going to find a folder called background colors. If you go to the HTML, right click it and open with live server, it should present to you something that looks very similar to this, right? And this is pretty much, by looking at the HTML document, that's exactly what that picture was demonstrating to you, right? We have a header called background color change, and then we have three list items within this unordered list. One called turn red, turn blue, turn purple, and then we can even see here the IDs. We have the IDs already set: turn red, turn blue, turn purple, right? Because of that, we can check out the JavaScript. And the JavaScript in this file is the exact same as the picture I just showed you on the slides, right? The JavaScript's already linked. We can see here on line 10 of the backgroundscolor.html. It's linked, so we know that this functionality will work directly for this. We're grabbing the document that we're linked to, right? We're using query selector, grabbing each class, whether it's red, blue, or purple, and then adding the event listener click. And each one has their own individual function that we created down below here. And if we check out our page, we should be able to click the actual list item and to change the background color, right? Why is it changing the entirety of the page itself? Well, because, my bad. Because remember, if you look at the function, we're grabbing the document. We're doing query selector. And what is it grabbing? It's grabbing body. It's grabbing the tag body, right? So it's grabbing the entire body itself that's within our HTML document. It's grabbing all this, and everything within here is just changing the background color. Cool?
Sid, can I ask a question, Guillermo?
Guillermo, my name is Roger, Kim. But sure.
Roger, I'm sorry. Okay,
Sure.
so on line 10, 6, 10, and 14, if instead of body, we put hashtag turn red or dot turn red, would it just have turned those words red?
It would change the background color of those words red, yes. You want to try it out? We can. We can do for line 6, we can do turn red. And then we click it, you see the background of that list item is red, correct, right?
Nice. Oh, thank you.
No problem. And as you guys may have noticed, to grab a class, it has to be the hashtag. For the ID, I'm pretty sure it's still the dot, and you can grab an element by itself just by putting the actual tag element in there, right? Without the left and right arrows. Any other questions, guys? Everyone getting it so far? No confusion here? Hey, I'm here for you. I'm still getting paid whether you guys ask questions or not, so ask. All right, cool. Moving on. Now you guys actually get to try it out. So this is gonna be the student practice, right? So this is what essentially you guys are supposed to create. I know most of you guys are not gonna look like this, but the intent is try to make it look just like this, right? This assignment can be found in your lesson 4. Go to background. I'm wrong. No, I'm not wrong. Okay. I'm just dumb. Yeah, so pretty much the background colors, which you already have preset, you're going to work on what's already pre-built for you guys and add on to it, right? And the intent is to get it to look like your the picture within your folder, right? The color changer.png. This is your end goal. If you guys want to do more and whatnot, experiment, I encourage it. But yeah, at a minimum, try to get it like this, right? Use everything you've learned up to this point with CSS as well to make these divs, kind of space them out, get them at this height, and whatnot, right? I don't think there's a picture down here that you guys can use. If you guys want to download your own picture, you guys can. I do not care, right? Make it yours. Sound good? We'll take the next 30 minutes to work on this. Actually, probably less. I'll ask around as we go through it to see how you guys are doing. And yeah, I'm here if you guys have any questions. We're not gonna go into breakout rooms. This is the first time. I'll stay here for any questions. But go ahead and give it a try.
Can't hear you, Roger.
Thank you. Let's start heading back. Let's get 2 volunteers. One who got close to finishing the assignment or finished the assignment, and someone who, maybe decided to kind of venture off and try different things if you experimented with other methods. If you like to demonstrate, that'd be pretty awesome.
I tried a whole bunch of wacky stuff, but fell kind of short.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. It's okay. Color changer unbroke. Yeah, nice. I like it. I see, Justin, you said hello world, I hate .css. Yeah, it's either you love or hate it, man. Once you guys continue going through the immersive program or whichever program you decide to do, uh, whether you decide to stick with full stack development, or you decide to venture off and specialize on something specific, and you kind of see that once you guys start applying to different jobs. When you guys apply to jobs, you'll look for full stack development, but you'll see that a lot of these jobs ask for like very specific roles, like, oh, we're looking for a front end or we're looking for back end. And then eventually you even start venturing out to like data analysts and whatnot. But some people tend to choose one or the other, if not both. But for some reason, us dudes don't really like the CSS too much. We don't like the creative stuff. We just like data and seeing numbers and making stuff work. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of CSS as well, but awesome, good stuff. Justin, I see your code. Cool stuff. What's the can I see what was that clear both?
I created
Oh.
a separate function. After it iterates through,
Mhm.
it will, if you click it again, it will clear it and reset everything. And so you can click a different one.
Okay. Awesome. Anyone else wants to show what they got? No?
I got pretty close, I think.
Let's see it, James.
Yeah.
Did anyone add any images? Make it look cool.
Maybe one day, not today.
I spent most of the time trying to figure out how to divide a screen by 6.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Can you see my screen?
I cannot.
No.
At
Oh,
least not yet. It's
wait.
probably still loading.
Uh,
There it is. You start screen
how about
sharing.
now? Okay.
It's loading. There we go. Okay,
Cool.
awesome. Yeah, you did get pretty close. Green.
And I was close. Um, I couldn't figure out how to do the random. I got close with a let me show it. I was trying to like build another function to like pick one of those colors at random, but I couldn't really figure out how to get it to execute properly.
If I'm correct, within the random function inside your opening close parentheses, it should take a start and end point for the number it would choose.
In the random,
Yeah.
so if
Mm,
I wanted it, I was trying to pick a like a index between 0 and 4. This would actually do like 0 and 4.
it'd be like 0, 5, maybe. I think it includes what you start with, but not what you end with. So it will be up to 4, but not
Right.
including 4, right? So yeah, so it would be like that.
So like that.
Yeah. So one thing you can do, which is pretty cool that you can kind of see, if you want to see if your functions are doing what it should do, uh, go ahead, on line 34, put a space, at the very end. You pretty much, make a line, like between line 34 and
Oh,
35. Yeah.
uh-huh.
And then just create a variable and do map.random.
You said map.random?
Yeah, so you're gonna create a random variable, just call it number, right? So let number equals math.random, math.random, like the same method that you
Oh,
did on line
maps.
36. Yes.
Excuse me. Yep.
Okay. English is my second language, so I do apologize.
It's okay.
And then you can just do like 0 to 10, right? Whatever you want to do, and then do console.log on the next line. We'll put 0, 10. My bad. I should have specified. Where's this function being triggered? Is there an event that's triggering this function?
I nestled it in the turn random function, but I also wasn't confident if that was the right placement either.
I mean, yeah, you can do that, yeah. So I mean, once you create the function, you can do it in there. Uh, let's do this. Just create a button somewhere on your HTML. Just create like uh a button.
I'm sorry, what?
Create a button in your HTML, like something like after your
Oh,
div, your last div.
yeah.
All right, and then in there give it a a class. Just call it like class is color, whatever. And it should appear, add some text in there so we can actually see a little bit more within your button text. Just put like, this is color. Yeah, correct. All right, it should be on your page, correct? Let me see your document.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now I want you to grab that button through your JavaScript file, right? So on line 8, you can do document.query selector and then grab the button so we can actually start adding some event listeners to it.
Um, and here I should put the class, right?
Correct. Hashtag color. Oh, my bad. Yeah.
The period,
You're
yeah.
right. You're right. Yep. Then add an event listener, do click, and then the function you're going to give it is going to be get color.
Get. Oh, I see.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
that.
Yes. Now, within your document, I want you to right click, go to inspect on your browser.
Said inspect.
Yeah, right click on your browser anywhere on the white. Open up the inspect, very bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
This will open up your your developer tools, kind of, right? You can go to console at the very top. Right, this works just like your command line, right? And then when you
Mhm.
press something, like when you press that button, right, it's supposed to do oh, we didn't even do it on line 35. Put space and then add a new line and put console.log number. We can actually like print stuff out on our browser and see if our functions are working. Right, so if you want to experiment with your math.random function, we can kind of see if we're actually getting the numbers we're looking for, and then go back to the browser, and then press the button. And if it's working, it should print something out. Now, it didn't print anything. Console log hello on line 36. Let's make sure the button's working. That's fine too.
I think I need to put this.
Uncaught reference get color is not defined. It's saying is that the method is not defined. Okay, I think it's because you created a function within a function, maybe the
Right, so
indentation.
if I put this down here instead,
Try it.
Does it matter on line 8 that there's parentheses
Yeah.
after the function?
Maybe. Go back to it.
I think it just worked this time.
Yeah. There we go. It was because it was within that function, right?
Right.
So it wasn't getting. All right, now let's see. We can get rid of that hello and put a number now.
Okay.
There we go. We got a random number between 0 and press it again.
It's like it only
Repre-
does it once.
Refresh it.
Zero and one at the moment.
Why is it only working every time we refresh it? Hmm. On line 8, go ahead and take all the parentheses.
These.
Run it again.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, so it's getting from 0 to 1. Let me look up the math at random. But
Yeah, James, I think you had it right earlier when you multiplied it by 5.
Like that.
oh yeah, I think you were right. So apparently math.random returns to you a number between 0 and 1, which is why you do need a multiplier.
Or should the multiplier be 4? Because now it's going over. Or would I round?
I think it would make sense to round. But do you guys see the intent here though? Like being able to use the console, having the accessibility of math.random. The console specifically is very helpful, especially when you want to make sure like, hey, like, did I link my JavaScript correctly? Especially when you guys are starting off. You might forget how to link it, or there might be an error in your functions, like is my function even working? Is the button is not doing what it should be doing? Well, let me do some, quote unquote debugging, right? So by adding that console log, you can use that developer tool, the console within the inspect, and you can see in real time, is this button doing what it should be doing? And we even got to see like how it was running automatically because it wasn't properly set on the event listener, right? So it's just a nice way to make sure your program is working how it should. But
So
great.
to fix this, wouldn't he use like .floor and that would fix it?
Yes, It should.
Okay.
But awesome, good stuff. I think that was a really
Yeah.
good learning experience for everybody. You guys got to see something cool. So all right, go ahead, stop sharing. We're gonna go ahead and continue with today's class. Share. All right. So we just finished background colors. But honestly, the rest of this class is gonna be you guys doing assignments. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. But we'll get to that in a bit. So referencing HTML with elements with JavaScript continued. So right here in this code snippet, we created a variable called let total equals 0. As you guys already saw, like you pretty much you're just using JavaScript, right? The only difference between what you guys been coding up to this point with JavaScript is now you're adding a new element, which is working with a DOM. So grabbing specific elements using the document method. But everything else when it comes to JavaScript is still the same. All right, don't get confused. Like it's nothing new. Like you're still just coding in JavaScript. Only difference is now you have accessibility to a document. All right, so here they create a variable called 0. We have different query selectors grabbing different IDs. Each one has a different function. One's called make 0, add 3, add 9, and sub 2. And this is going to go hand in hand with the next slide, which is going to be our bad calculator. All right, this method, they got the total that they declared earlier, which is 0. And then they are grabbing an element with the ID called place to put result, and they're manipulating the text within that element and putting the total as the text, right? So now you guys are seeing how we can directly manipulate what was typed in to that tag, right? So for example, your boxes that you guys created that were labeled blue, red, orange, you guys can directly manipulate the text within those boxes by using inner text and whatnot. Yeah, so that's gonna bring us on to the bad calculator.html. Next, let's go ahead and open it up. Close some of this stuff up. All right, so here's our bad calculator. We can open it up on live server, and it should bring to something like this. It's a bad calculator because obviously it doesn't have the other numbers in here, but we should be able to click the different buttons, and we see that it manipulated text result, right? And where is result? Result is here with the it has the text called result, and then within the h2 tag there's a span, and the span itself is what has the ID, right? It's not the h2, it's the span, and that keeps us from manipulating this, so that stays constant, but we're just manipulating what comes after result. Cool. Now your job is going to be to make this bad calculator into a good calculator, right? So I want you guys to use the new method you guys just learned, the inner text, and it should be anything different than what you guys just did right now. Only difference will be adding the additional numbers to this calculator, and then actually adding 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and whatnot. And yeah, is that simple enough? I see Owen, you're laughing. Like, oh no, how am I gonna do this? Last time I did this, people got very confused. All right, keep it simple. All right, start with addition and subtraction. All right, let's get all the numbers here. Each number should be able to hold a value, right? And then depending on the arithmetic that you're doing would vary on what function is going to do, whether we're going to be adding stuff to our total or subtracting. All right, so keep it simple. Don't get too crazy with multiplication and division yet. Just try to add numbers to it and remove numbers to it. All right. I'll stay here in the call if you guys have any questions. Actually, for this one, we'll probably break off into groups. So you guys can also help each other. But does anybody have any questions before I open up these rooms? Nobody?
So we're just supposed to turn the black and white weird text box into the second picture. Is that what I'm understanding?
So right now, the calculator is a really bad calculator, right? It only adds
Yeah, it's
plus
got
3
like
plus
nonsense
9.
like Domino's pizza and stuff like that in it,
Yes.
right? So
The intent is to make it from a bad calculator to a good calculator, what your
Got it.
typical calculator should be, right? So you're gonna have to create some new boxes, new numbers, and then add your arithmetic in there, so like plus, minus, multiplication, and division, right?
we sure didn't get much help, didn't we?
Yeah, it's a I mean, would you want for me to code it out for you? Like I mentioned to you guys before, right? You can see people code all day long, but unless you guys are actually put in the code yourself, you're not gonna learn. And there's not much to explaining what inner text does, right? So these methods, I can sit here and explain to you for the next 20 seconds how it works, but there's, you know, in what manner would you guys like for me to assist you on this?
I could use a refresher on the inner text and how you grab inner text, where you grab it from, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if everybody else already knows all of that.
I can just figure it out.
Yeah, so inner text, right? So I mentioned to you guys before, there's multiple methods. We can sit here and talk about all the different methods there is and how to manipulate every single piece in JavaScript within DOM. And that would take me forever. You're not gonna learn from it. I can give you the material and you can look for it, which you can find it here. Right now, the only thing you're gonna be working with will be inner text. So how do we find that? Well, we can go to check out DOM element, and we have different things here, right? We have inner HTML attributes. We can manipulate the styles and properties. The inner text, inner HTML, all these different methods that we're talking about right now are pre-built that come with JavaScript and working with the DOM. Like I didn't just invent these and pull them out of nowhere. Like these are already preset. The only thing we're doing here is exposing you to the most common used methods that you will be using, right? So query selector being one of the biggest ones. So grabbing your elements, that's the first concept that you need to learn, right? How do we grab things from our DOM so we can actually manipulate them, right? The next one is event listeners. That's the second biggest thing when it comes to working with your web page. And then after that, which we'll get to later, will be your child classes and your parent classes. 75 to 80% of the code that you're gonna be doing for your JavaScript when working with your document is literally just adding event listeners and query selecting, right? So there you do have all these other options that you can use, but as I mentioned to you, 70 to 80% of the code you will ever do will probably be just query selectors and manipulating all these buttons, adding some functionality to the stuff on your HTML. Right? So where am I pulling the inner text, inner HTML? That's one of the methods that you have accessible to you. You can find them within the W2 schools, or if you have any other learning material you guys like to use, you guys can use that too. Right? So looking at the code, we have bad calculator. Let's open up the JavaScript for it. As you guys saw in the picture, we had what you guys saw before on your background colors. Same thing, document.query. We're still doing the same thing. We're still grabbing stuff by its class, right? We're still adding the event listener, which is the click, right? It's still simple. It's still the same as the previous example. The only thing different is what our functions are going to be doing, right? We are grabbing a variable that we declared ourselves, right? And then using that variable within our function to add it within our document, right? So we see here document.query selector. We're doing the exact same thing we did before. We're grabbing one of the elements using this class. And the only thing different between this assignment and the last assignment is the fact that we are changing the inner text using the inner text method, right? You guys still with me? That's the only difference, right? The inner text and the total is the only thing that I just introduced right now. So don't get overwhelmed. Essentially, what you guys will be doing, right, will be creating for example, instead of making an add 9, add 3, you would just create like one add function, right? You can essentially delete all this and do function add, right? And then you would grab every number that's been typed in. You can create a variable for that. You can have like let type numbers, name it whatever you want, and you can have it as an empty like array, right? And as a user is clicking these buttons, you're adding stuff to this variable. Make sense? Once you're ready to actually add something, you can do, your function add, and then within your function, you can grab everything that's within your type number list, and then just sum it up and change the inner text, right? Does that make sense for you guys? Don't overthink it. I promise you, it's a lot simpler than you think. All right, take it one step at a time. Get your boxes in there, add some numbers, and then just focus on doing an add method. You can remove the sub, you can remove the add 3, add 9. You're not gonna need it. You're gonna make it better. You're gonna have one overall add function that will take all the numbers that have been inputted and then just add it to your total. Cool? Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna be jumping between all these rooms, and I can give you guys some, 1-on-3 coaching will make it easier, and answer any questions you guys might have. But as I mentioned, don't overthink it. We only introduce adding a variable and manipulating inner text. All right, it's simple. Oh, you did good. How's everybody feeling?
That was interesting.
Yeah. Good stuff. Who got something working at least close to a real calculator? Nobody? Let's see it.
I was getting there.
You share them, Justin? Oh, my bad. Okay. All right. Well, I'll share a little bit. I worked on something the last 15 minutes. I didn't have like an answer key for this one, so I had to code it myself real quickly. I didn't have enough time to finish the entire calculator, and I didn't make it pretty, but I want to show you guys like the main concept of how it was supposed to work. All right. So as you can see, the main concept, you'll see it right now, right? It does not look pretty, but the point is I have the 1 through 9. I did not add a 0. I should have added a 0. But I have like my plus, minus, division, my multiplication, and my equal sign, right, to let me know what my result is. And I got a small little display here. I don't have a clear button or anything. I just kept it simple. I just went through here, deleted everything that was here before for JavaScript, and then just started adding some stuff in here. Let's look at the HTML first. First and foremost, I created a div for my display, right? This is where I was gonna have like my results. Because if you guys think about a calculator, before you even add, subtract anything, you are pressing numbers, right? Getting the number you're trying to create and it's adding it to your display. So I want to make sure I have somewhere I can display all the numbers that are being added, right? The next big div I have is the calculator itself, right? So this was going to hold all my numbers in here. It will look prettier and more like an actual calculator or CSS, but this overall calculator itself is supposed to hold all my rows of numbers as well as my arithmetic buttons. All right, so within this overall calculator div, I have 2 sub divs. One is called numbers and one is called arithmetic. This just holds my numbers, right? The rows of numbers I have here, 1 through 9. Notice that these all have 2 classes. One itself is the number class. That allows me so I can manipulate all the numbers in general so they look pretty when working with my CSS. And then I gave it their individual class itself, the 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth, so I can manipulate that specific one. Okay. Could I give it an ID? Sure, right? But we also discussed yesterday about the powers of being able to have multiple classes instead of just having just right off the bat go into a high level of specificity, just giving it an ID from the start. So I gave it 2 classes. to kind of reiterate on that. And then notice how they're all broken off into their own roles, row 1, row 2, row 3, makes it significantly easier whenever you guys are ready to add some CSS to your calculator, right? And then finally my div with my arithmetic, add, subtract, divide, multiply, result. I did not get to do anything except the add, right? But this itself will show you how it was all supposed to work. My subtract, divide, multiplier did not work, but the result in add does. Finally, let's get to some JavaScript, right? So at the very top, I have some values that I created, which will allow me to store some stuff that I want to keep track of. I wanted to keep track of whether I'm adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, right? So I just create variables to let me know whether it's false or true, right? They would switch depending on whether I click the button or not, whether I'm adding right now or whether I'm subtracting. And then I have one value there, with one variable called all values, which is just a list, which I will store all the numbers that I'm working with, and I can just go through once I'm done. Because what if I'm adding multiple numbers, right? So that all values allows me to store multiple different integers. Finally, we have the query selectors. You're gonna need individual query selectors for every single button, right? If I would have tried to do document.query selector and then did number on every single, like just one number, and hope to be able to grab each one depending when I click it, it's not gonna grab every single one. It has to be unique. So each button itself has their individual query selector, their individual event listener. And then after the numbers, I have two other query selectors. One is called add and one is called result. For the numbers themselves, they all have the exact same function, and that function is called save to display. What save to display does, it grabs the value of the current selector I'm working on, right? So I use the this.enter text. All right, so when I use it by pressing the number 1, right? The number 1 is the one calling the save to display, right? So it is a function that belongs to number 1. So by adding this.enter text, it's saying, hey, I want to grab the inner text of the selector that I'm currently in right now, right? So it is currently on the 1 or whichever one I press it in, it's gonna grab the inner text of that specific tag that I'm working on. That saves the value of whether it's a number 1, number 2, so on and so forth, right? Once I got that value, I went ahead and added it to my display, right? I did document.query selector. I grabbed the display by its class. I grab its inner text, which to start, it should have nothing, right? So it should be like a blank string. And I saved it to the current value. Then, once again, I grab that same display inner text and I change the value of its, what it used to be its current value, and then the new value by adding them together. Does that make sense so far?
Can you explain? So the dot inner text that's just a JavaScript like function.
Correct. If you recall from when I mentioned to you guys earlier, the DOM has specific methods that we can use. One of those methods is inner text, right? Just like query selector, inner text is just another one. Does that make sense?
Okay. And
Right.
it's the same thing with this. So like this dot inner text.
This is very common from in all languages of programming mainly. You can use typically in JavaScript and Python use this to refer to the function within itself, right? You could actually use it in other regular functions in other places, not just here in the DOM. So this is common. It's generally common when it comes to functions in general.
So what does
right?
it do?
It calls on itself, saying this like, hey, this function that I'm currently working on, that who I am, this is me. Does that make sense? This is calling on itself.
Or I'm lost with this. I've never used that, so maybe I just need to do my own research.
Yeah, let's see. I'll try to find you guys some resource about this. Essentially, it's referring to the function itself. It's calling upon itself. It's almost like breaking the third wall. did someone say something? I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask, so by the time it gets to that function, save to display, it has already been through one of the numbers 7 through whatever, so it already has that number 1, right? So that's what the this is, whatever is it just grabbed from.
Yeah, so when it gets to the this dot inner text, it's referring to what I'm working on, right? So right now, for example, if I were to press the number 1, the number 1 is going to listen to a click, right? Me clicking it will trigger this event, right? That event is going to trigger the save to display function. Because I click specifically the number 1, when I get to line 21 and it says this dot inner text is going to look inside of number 1 because I'm currently working on number 1, right? It's calling upon itself, right? If I were to click the number 2, the number 2 button will run the function, and the number 2 will listen within itself using the this dot inner text, and it'll grab the 2, right? So depending which one I click, will determine which text it grabs, right? So whoever calls the function, that's the person who is going to give their text. Does that make sense?
Just, that makes a lot of sense. So like, just to reiterate, this is for my own sanity. So if I clicked on the number 1 with your code, this would mean just number 1.
Correct.
Because it's calling on the inner text.
Yeah. Think of
so it's
these
letting
buttons,
that value equal 1. Correct.
Correct. Right. So think of these buttons, these selectors as like their own person, right? And they're using this function, right? The function saying, hey, I'm gonna grab this inner text within myself, right? Whoever calls the function, that's who this is. Cool. Awesome. So by clicking that button, it grabs the text within itself and it saves it to a value. We grab the value that's currently within the display and we changed it with what used to be its value and then the new value we're going to use, right? So if I click 1, the 1 grabbed the text 1 that's within that tag, right? It saved it into this variable right here. That same function is grabbing the value that's saved inside of the display, which before I clicked the 1, it was 0. There was nothing in there. It was blank. And it saved it inside this variable called current value. That way I can use it, right? Because it would make no sense to, well, I mean, I think I can, but it would just be too much code. I can do document.query selector .display inner text is equal to document.query selector and then type it in again, right? I could do this, but to avoid doing that, I just saved it into its own value before doing it. So I'm not calling it again here. Does that make sense? Of why I did that manner? Right? It looks like extra code here. It's a long line. So it just neater if I just saved it into a value first before I reused it. All right. So it grabbed the value of 1, it grabbed the value within the display, and then it added them together. And because there was nothing there, it just 1. If I were to press 1 again, it's going to grab the value of that button, which is 1. It's going to grab the value within the display, which is already has 1. And it's all it's going to do is going to add them together, conjoin them. Right? And every time I do it, it's checking the display again. Oh, what does the display have? Oh, now it has 2 1s. Well, I'm going to grab the 1 again, and I'm going to add it again to what's currently on the display. And it just keeps doing that over and over and over again. Right? So that's how those buttons work. Now that I got the buttons working, let's talk about the adding, right? For adding, what I had to do was I had to grab what I had saved on my display, right? Because when we think about a calculator, we press the number we want to add first. Let's get a bunch of 1s. And now I'm ready to add. Well, I have to ensure that I save this number somewhere so I know what I'm adding, right? So by pressing the plus sign, what it's going to do is going to push what's saved in that display into my all values list, right? So we have to grab the text that's in here and then push it to my list, right? So I can keep track how many numbers I'm adding up together, right? So I add it to the list, and then I reset the display so it's blank, right? Because once again, going back to our calculator, how do calculators work? We add the first number we're trying to add. And then once we press the plus sign or the minus, it should reset and we should add our second number, right? So we have to reset the display. And we see that here. By pressing the plus sign, it's a clean slate. The number isn't gone completely. I saved it in the all values variable, but now I can add my second number. So I'm gonna add a 12 again, right? Every time I do this, it's doing something. It's saving it to the all values. But I'm also changing my add variable to true to let my calculator know, hey, and now I'm finally going to add something. So I need to make sure that add is true. That way I can actually get the result at the end. I did a console.log so I can kind of see that my calculator is actually doing what it should be doing. We can go to console and you can see there 11 plus, right? By putting the plus, I did a console.log all values. This is currently what's saved inside that all values variable. It's that list, right? So I already have one number I was adding up. Here's a second number I'm adding up, and you can see the array is getting bigger. All the values I've added so far are being saved. That way, at the very end, I can just do the sum all together, and then so on and so forth. It just keeps saving them. That's what the add result is doing. And then finally, I want to get my result. I'm ready to press the equal sign. So for that, I have to add the final value I was working on, right? So I did 12, I did plus 12, but this number hasn't been added yet. Before this, the only way I've been adding things to my my all values variable was by pressing that plus sign. But I'm ready to get my final result. So I need to make sure that whatever is left on my display is added to my all values variable. So I have to ensure that I push whatever left on display within it. And I even did a console log to ensure that it was in there, right? So it did add my final 12. Let's go ahead and reset that again. Once it did that, I'm checking. If add is equal to true, then I want to do this code block. And this is where I would do, if subtract is true, then do this. If multiply is true, then do the other thing. If division, then do this. Make sense? So here's where I would check what I'm currently doing. So I check, hey, is add true? Well, yes, right? It is. I've been adding so far. I've added the plus sign, so it is true. Then at that point, I created a variable called total, left it at 0, and I started a for loop. This for loop allowed me to loop through my all values list so I can grab all my numbers, and I one by one start adding them to my total. Once the for loop is done, that means I've added all my numbers that I've saved up, and I manipulate my result text to show me what the total is. And then finally, I set add back to false to ensure that I can use it again. So by pressing the equal sign, you see here result is 24. Is everyone still with me?
Yeah, I was confused for a second because it didn't make sense on how you would, add, multiply, divide a string, but with that total plus equals parse int, it turns it into an integer at that point, and then you
Correct.
can manipulate it. Got you. Understood.
Anyone have any questions? Ask away, man. I'm here for you guys.
I don't really understand that adding
Well,
equals false or true. I don't understand that.
So if you recall, it's one of it's a Boolean, right? It's a type of variable. It's a Boolean, whether it's true or false. I created different booleans to be able to check whether I'm doing different things, right? So if they're initially all set to false, because I'm not adding, I'm not subtracting, I'm not dividing, I'm not multiplying. The moment I press that plus sign, I change the add boolean to true so I can have something to reference to know what I'm currently doing, right? So by looping through and checking what's true, I know on my result what I should be doing. If one of these booleans is true, that means that's the one I'm currently working on. That means at some point I press the plus sign and change add to true. That means I'm adding, right? If subtract is equal to true, that means at one point I press the minus button and I intend to subtract, right? That's all the booleans there are doing for me. It's just keeping track what my intent is, what my number should be doing. And depending on which one is true, then I would actually do the math for that, right? Because obviously if subtract is true, I wouldn't be adding everything to a total, right? I would be grabbing the numbers and subtracting itself, yada, yada. I would be doing a different type of math, right? So I have to have the booleans so I know which one I'm actually going to do.
So that result function will also have if minus is true, if multiplication is true, and if division is true, right? Or not? Is that what you're saying? As
Yes.
you build, you have to add that to it?
Correct. So this is one code block. This takes care of the add. If I were to continue with this project and I wanted to create my minus, I would go down here and then I would do if subtract is equal to true. And then I would do an independent thing that's only supposed to be unique to subtract, right? And so on and so forth for every different type of operation I'm trying to do, right? This will only happen, everything between line 37 and 43, this will only happen if add is actually equal to true. Because once it gets to line 36, it's going to check, hey, is add true? If it's not, it's going to skip all this. It's going to go to line 45. Right? These are what we call if and else blocks, right? So that's what we're doing here.
That makes sense. Otherwise, you'd have to have 4 different functions, right? For plus, minus.
Yeah, and this here, I'm just able to kind of figure out what exactly I'm doing.
Nice. Okay, I get it now. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else? If you're remotely confused or there's anything you did not get, please ask. I'm here for you guys. I'm still on the clock.
Can you scroll back up? I just wanted to see if how you define those. Oh, as lit. Okay, that was it.
No problem.
So because you use lit in this instance, since it's within the global scope, and then when you go into the function, which is also the local scope,
Yeah,
it changes. It can change / update that value in the global scope. That way you can grab it. Because like if you use const in this instance or var, you wouldn't be able to alter it, or is
if I
it
use
best
if I
practice
use
to use
const,
lit?
const stands for like constant. If I use constant, I shouldn't be able to manipulate it, right? But in regards
Manipulate it
to
at all.
yeah, in regards to global scope and local scope, I have them to the very top, right? Because these have to be declared before these can use it, right? Because
Correct.
no, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I messed it up. I had these below here, right? I had them below here, and then I tried using them, and they're like, "Oh, add has not been declared yet." I'm like, "Well, I did declare it." I'm like, "Oh, it had not came yet. It was out of the scope, whatever." So I had to move it all the way up. I took it out of all the functions, and I made sure that everything had access to it. Now, if I create a value in here, for example, let's say I create this value, let value, and then I try to use it in this function right here, it wouldn't work, right? Because it only exists within this function. But the
Correct.
functions have access to the stuff that's within the global scope, right? But not the other way around. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I have a question now.
Owen.
For the add event listener,
for the function, can you call the function with the actual value? So say like I wanted to do, instead of the way you did it to where you did this dot inner text, what if I did save to display and just in the parentheses had 1 and had, could you do that? Or does it explicitly need to be just call a function without any values? Can you add the values in the add event listener part?
You cannot add the value, but you can make a function from there if you would like. Essentially, what it would look like, it would look like, which one was it that you're talking about?
So
Like for
like
this one?
say instead of, or any of the numbered ones. So instead of pulling the number from the inner text, say, I just wanted to do a function and instead of putting the value as this dot inner text, it would just be, you call that value right there, right then and there. You say save to display parentheses 1 if you clicked on number 1.
No, you
can't do that?
No, you cannot. You have to use this dot inner text so you can reference itself. Right?
Okay.
You have to do that. You are able to make a function here right off the bat. You could do something like this,
Okay.
where it's like function, and then you can just make the function inline. You could do that. I didn't
Okay.
do that because it can make it more confusing. I just kept it separate. But besides that, even if I still did that, even I did a function within that line, I still have to use this dot inner text. So the document knows what I was referencing. I'm referencing the document selector that I'm currently working in.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No problem. Who's next? All right. Okay.
I have another question if nobody else does.
Send it, Kim.
Can you, on, again, those lines like Owen was just saying, can you, if you wanted to put assign a variable and that is equal to the result of that going down to the function, or is that, you cannot do that?
Explain, I'm sorry. I don't think I understand.
So if on line 7, could we say let var equal document.query1 save to display? Would it go down to save to display, give you the what you wanted, and then that's what the variable is equal to?
For the event listener?
Yeah.
I looked at the,
I think I know what you're talking about. You're asking if this could be a variable instead of a function?
Nope. I would want that to be a function. Could you put at the beginning of line 7, let var equal what gets returned when you do that function?
What do you want to save? What do you want this saved to?
Like you could say one, spell 1, let 1 equal like the word 1, O-N-E equal.
Oh, let 1 equal.
Yeah, so then if you did that, would that variable 1 be equal to the, well, you're not returning.
No, you're not returning anything, yeah. I'll think of this as more of an action, right? Or I wouldn't say like an action. Honestly, it's almost like connecting. Think of it as connecting, right? You're not creating variables here. You're not saving anything. You're connecting stuff, right? That query selector and then the specifically event listener. Specifically event listener, you're connecting stuff, right? Like for example, here we were able to save it. We save the text itself because this, by grabbing query selector dot inner text, this is returning something. The built-in method for inner text is going to return to you some type of value, right? This specifically is not returning to you anything, right? It's just like connecting something. Inner text does return something. As a matter of fact, there's actually I'm sorry. I usually use Python.
Mhm.
Let's see that. Undefined. Nothing.
That answered the question. Yeah. You know, Roger, what I personally, because so much of this is brand new to me, I think it would have been more helpful to me to have a really, really simple assignment to even understand how this works. This is such a complicated assignment that I don't think I got the principle that we're supposed to get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so. mm, I hate to say it, but that's how the immersive program is gonna be.
Okay.
Right? I really don't want to give you the answer, right? 'Cause I wish I could, like, I want to be like, yeah, you're right. We should give you something easier. That's how the immersive program's gonna be. All right, so you need to be prepared, right?
For me to succeed, I would have to tomorrow go work on this on my own. Do you have time to do that well, I'm doing the evening and weekends, so.
Tomorrow, at what time would you want?
No, I'm not asking you. I'm just saying, will I have that kind of time to say, okay, I don't understand this, so I'm gonna work on this tomorrow and figure it out? Will I have that kind of time to do that? And will I be able to succeed if that's what I need to understand something this complicated?
If you're doing, I mean, you should. If you're doing evening weekend, you would have like Monday or Friday. And when it comes to the program itself, you guys are gonna have, for example, I'll just give you an explanation, like an example using the immersive program. I'm not exactly sure how the schedule goes for the evening weekend, but just for the example, for the immersive program, lecture is between, I believe, 8:30 or 9 until like on average noon, at the latest 1 p.m. And then you have individual work, assignment work from 1 to like 5:30, right? And then throughout that time, you have instructors that are readily available for you that will speak to you one-on-one in a call. I've had instructors try to teach something to me for 2 hours. They will do that for you, right? The moment class is over, there's a 30-minute break between class being over, and then there will be an evening TAs that are typically on the clock for at least, I believe, at least 2 or 3 hours in the evenings. I know that because I did it too. I was an evening TA. So there's designated people around the clock, right? You will be assigned to a group. You will have a designated TA assigned to you. So even if there's not an instructor available to talk to you, there will be a TA with you at all times in your breakout rooms, there to answer any questions, right? I'm assuming that if we have that in the immersive program, you have something very similar to that in the evening program as well. There's no way that we would not provide you support on the evening. I say that because I didn't go to the evening program and I don't talk to the evening program instructors, but if that's how we have the other courses set up, then I would assume that you guys have something very similar.
Okay.
So the support will be there, right?
Okay.
You guys will be fine. I promise you.
Okay.
In regards to this assignment specifically, there's 2 things that are different between this assignment and the last assignment. It was having the values that I have here from lines 1 through 5 and enter text. There's nothing else in here that is different, if you guys think about it. All this that you see from lines 20 to 48 is basic JavaScript knowledge that you guys have been working on your own before getting there, preparing for the assessment. If you have gone through the Quick Pass program and what you guys are doing now, right? So this is like basic JavaScript. This is creative value, right? We have Booleans, whether it's true or false, right? So understanding that type of concepts, right? For loops, if else statements. Those are stuff that if you are struggling with, you can go to the introduction to coding, and you can review that as well. So when it comes to this assignment specifically, the assignment isn't the complex part. If you guys feel like you're struggling with this, I would touch back on the basics of the syntax and variables and if else statements, for loops, which was taught in the intro to coding, right? And I'm not saying that to hurt anybody's feelings, I promise you, right? I'm trying to find the root problem. So the assignment itself isn't the issue. It's honestly just, I feel like I'm losing you guys here, and these are just basic JavaScript. The only thing new that I introduced from the last assignment to now was adding a value to it here and just enter text. And I can't stress that enough, right? There's nothing else that has changed. All this is just all basic JavaScript that we're working on. All right. If you guys have any questions, I'm here. I wake up a little bit late, so I might message you guys late. But I swear to you, if you guys have any questions, hit me up and I'll talk to you guys one-on-one. I'll spend an hour or two. You just have to bear with me. My kid sometimes yells in my ear. But I'm here. Like, I'm not getting paid to do it, but like I'm all about helping you guys and making sure every one of you guys is successful. So, like, let me know. I'm practically unemployed. I'm a 100% disabled veteran, so I'm just chilling half the time. So, like, this is what I do. Yeah, I'm just living through life. So let me know, and I'll be here for you guys. All right. Cool. Let's go ahead and move forward. We're not gonna have too much time to finish off the remainder of the assignment, but there is one more, and we'll actually leave this for homework, right? That way you guys can kind of touch up on this assignment that we just finished and figure out, what you guys need to improve on or what you might need help on. But if you guys have time, do check out Day of the Week HTML. If the majority of you guys don't touch it tomorrow, we can start off with this one tomorrow before we start APIs. There's no problem with that. We are going pretty fast. So, like, we can extend this until tomorrow and touch back on this tomorrow if needed, right? But if you guys do have time, do check out the calendar, which I believe is a much simpler one than this one. Just open it up. It looks like this, right? Super simple. Complete a small application that lets the user know if they imputed a weekday, weekend, or they have an incorrect day of the week. Make sure your application is case sensitive, so Saturday is treated the same as Saturday or Saturday, right? So, if you need a break from this one assignment that we just did, check this one out. Get a nice warm fuzzy feeling of working with the DOM, and then go back to the calculator and try that again. If not, we can always do it tomorrow as well. Sound good? All right, we'll end it here. I'll stay back for if anyone has any questions. But if not, I hope you guys enjoyed today's class, or at least learn something. And I will see you guys tomorrow.